All right, well, welcome tonight. Thank you all for coming out. I see some familiar faces and some new faces, and we're always happy to see new faces and ones that have come out interested in things going on in the community. My name is Greg Powell, and I am the construction manager and engineering manager for MSD for this project. And tonight we're going to be talking about the Lexington and Payne Basin. This is our conceptual design meeting. I'd like to recognize before we begin our Councilman Bill Hollander is with us tonight, and he's going to say a couple words before we get started.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you all for being here. There are actually 3 of these CSO basins in District 9, so I have been to a number of these meetings, and they've all been well attended. So I really just wanted to thank you for coming to the meeting. Thank you for your input. At the end of the meeting, there'll be an opportunity to give your input, and there will also be an opportunity online if you're watching or you hear about the meeting and you're not here. I'll also say Beargrass Creek runs through District 9, and if you haven't been on Beargrass Creek, you ought to. If you have an opportunity to take a canoe trip on Beargrass Creek, you should do that as well. And it will really give you an opportunity to see the importance of this project for the community, not only to meet the terms of the consent decree, but to clean up a real asset for the community. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Councilman, for being here and for your support on these projects. All right, we are taping this tonight for Metro TV, so let me remind you, if you have a cell phone, if you could please put that on silence for this evening. And also, since we are taping for Metro TV, there'll be times during the presentation when you'll have a question. And we want to get to that question, but you should have a note card that you've been given. So when that time comes along and you think of something, go ahead and write that down, jot that down, something you can remember, and at the end of the presentation, and we will accept those questions, and we will take all the time we need to try to answer those questions yet this evening. So again, if you kind of forget and raise your hand or interrupt during the presentation, I'll just try to remind you that please pick up your note card and write on that so we can proceed with the program uninterrupted. All right, so let's get started. While we're here tonight, we're going to talk about this project. We had an introductory meeting a few months ago, talk about MSD's public outreach process to the community at large and to local neighborhoods, getting to know you, a little bit about you in attendance tonight and online if you take this survey online. Talk particularly about the Lexington Payne CSO Basin project and what will be our next steps, and get some feedback about what we're talking about tonight. All right, so while we're here, and some of this is repetitive from the other meetings that we've been to, but we'll go through this quickly. As you can see, we have sewer overflow locations throughout the county. We'll talk a little bit about what sewer overflows are in just a second. But the point of this slide is to show that it's not concentrated in one particular area. It's spread throughout the county. Outside of Waterson, it's primarily sanitary sewer overflows. Inside the Waterson, the purple dots are combined sewer overflows. We'll talk about those in just a minute. It's a community-wide problem that we're addressing. We're addressing those through new pipelines, storage, pumping and treatment, some green infrastructure, many different ways to handle this problem and address it. The consent decree is about an $850 million cost to this community. It's paid for by all of us as ratepayers. So I've used the term already. What is a combined sewer? It's a piping system that conveys both stormwater and wastewater in the same pipe. So this slide demonstrates that in, oops, let me back up. Originally, the combined sewers discharged directly into rivers and streams. After 1958, when the first water quality treatment center was built in the county, during dry weather, when we're not having rain events, all the flow goes to the plant for treatment, cleaned up and discharged in the Ohio River. But during rain events, this pipe is overwhelmed and the original pipes then overflow. So this is the rainwater diluted overflows that discharge. They don't stay in the pipe for treatment. That is a combined sewer overflow. And as I mentioned earlier, how do we control these? There are source controls. You can keep the rainwater out of the system. We use green infrastructure. We use downspout disconnections. If downspouts are connected to the sewer, then obviously every time it rains, it goes right into the sewer system and can overwhelm it by flow capacity. Sump pump disconnections. Again, your sump pump's working when there's high groundwater during a rain event that gets it to the sewer system. And sewer rehabilitation. We talked about in earlier presentations. For those of you who haven't seen that or haven't been to those, if you visit our website at msdprojectwin.org, you can see the previous presentations where we went into more in-depth about what causes the problems and what we can do as individually to alleviate the problem. Sewer rehabilitation. In the past, prior to MSD even taking over having a water quality treatment center, there were collection systems that were built out of clay pipes. They deteriorate over time, so high groundwater, rain conditions again. So sewer rehabilitation, we can put new pipe that's watertight in the ground to eliminate that problem. So these source controls keep the rainwater out of the system, keep it from being overwhelmed, and there's also gray infrastructure projects. There's pipeline projects, there's pump station expansions, wastewater treatment plant expansions, and we're talking about the suite of projects, storage basins, which we've had a number of public outreach programs about. Speaking about the storage basins, you can see by the consent decree, the large squares represent where the storage basins are located, and again, they're not concentrated in one area. They are located close to the combined sewer overflows. So you can see these dots represent the overflows, and they're upstream of where the basin is. And these basins, again, retain a volume of water during the rain event that's sewage and rainwater until the rain event passes and there's capacity in the sewer line, and then that water, rather than being discharged to Beargrass Creek or the Ohio River, then is conveyed to one of the water quality treatment centers. Where you've heard the term consent decree over the last several years. Where we are in this program, we're in the period from 2016, approximately 2020, where they're addressing that area inside the water system, the combined sewer system area. And that's about a $400 million suite of projects, and that's the Lexington and Payne Basin fits into that category. MSD has a new public outreach process. This graphic describes the plan that we use for each project to distribute and to receive information on the process or on the project as it moves through the design process. And from the citizen's role, it's important that you attend or listen to these or go online and provide we would provide to you, background and project information. We would like for you to understand why we're doing this, and then we also want some feedback from you. We had this meeting back in January. We'll talk about this for just a second. We had this meeting at this very location back on January 19th. That presentation and video are available on the Project WIN website. And tonight we're back, as we promised, to talk about the conceptual design. So that's where we are here, talking about the conceptual design. We'll talk about the site selection process. This is a large site that we're dealing with. We'll be asking for your input, feedback, and preferences. And we'll collect input from everyone that participates, either tonight or online later, by using the clickers or voting online. We'll take that information from you all, and we'll come back later with an advanced design, the advanced design meeting later this summer. And we'll talk about the information that we've gathered and what we can use, can't use, what we've been able to use from public input. All right, everybody should have got a clicker when you came in. If you've been here before, you're used to this process. We're going to practice using these for a second. We want to get to know you. It's simple to use. You're not identified. We didn't write down the clicker number when you came in, so we know who's voting for what. We can all see the results at the same time tonight. Everyone gets an equal voice. It's not who pushes on the button the hardest or talks the loudest. And then there's online polling for those who can't attend. This will be online for a month or two after this meeting to allow for input. Again, you can reach that through msdprojectwin.org or the other URL that you see here. All right, take your clickers out. Hit the number that corresponds to your age. All right. I'd like to know your gender, male or female. Okay, everybody ready? That should be a quick answer. All right. Okay, pay close attention to this map. Area 1, Area 2 is the light blue area, and then Area 3 is everything outside that. So the green area, Area 1, is Chestnut Street, Broadway, Lexington Road, that area. Home of the Innocents is right here. Where do you live, work, and spend your days? Is it in this central Area 1, or Area 2, or Area 3? So go ahead and vote for that.
Where are we located?
We're in 1 here. Is it open now?
So you can see the green dot.
Okay. All right. Everybody voting? All right. Next question. Where do you operate a business? It's the same geographic area. 1, 2, or 3. Area 1, number 1, Area 2, 2, 3, or not applicable. Okay. Next question. Where do you spend your days? Work, school, volunteer, etc. Again, the same geographic areas, so remember where that is. Where do you spend your days? Should have a couple more. All right. How did you hear about tonight's meeting? You can press a button for up to 4 different answers, is that correct? You can hit 5, but the last 4 will be what's recorded. All right. Everybody in? All right. Looks like 3 and 8, MSD email and the councilman's newsletter. Congratulations. How would you like to learn about MSD's projects? Again, you can press a button for up to 4. You can hit 1, 2, 3, 4, any numbers up to 4. All right, I'm going to close the polling.
Can we vote for more than one?
Vote up to 4.
Oh, 4,
Okay. Give you another second. All right, everybody ready? All right. MSD email and councilman's newsletter. 1 and 5, public meetings and neighborhood association. All right. We'll use that information to do the best we can to get information out for these meetings and about projects. All right, let's talk specifically why you're here this evening to talk about Lexington Payne CSO Basin project. Here's a map of some of the largest basin and green infrastructure projects in the city. As you can see, it's not an isolated issue, it's throughout the county. Again, primarily along the creeks. And Lexington Payne is circled right here. What is a CSO basin? As I said earlier, it's a basin that provides temporary storage for wet weather overflows that would otherwise flow directly to creeks, streams, or rivers. Once the rain event passes, then that collected water would be put back into the collection system for treatment when the system capacity is available. So again, it's not held for a long period of time. If we didn't have these, then those overflows would directly leave the pipe system and go into the creeks, streams, or rivers. And just, this is schematically, and this is a picture. Some basins are underground. This is a depiction of a rendering of an underground basin. Some people have water and combined sewer overflows above ground basins. Frequently asked questions about these basins. Will it create the potential for sewer backups? That's a great question. The high water elevation will be below basement elevation, so the highest the water will get in the basin is below the basement elevations. It does not eliminate the potential for backups, because backups can be caused by a number of reasons: roots in your property service connection, breakage in the line, things in the line that shouldn't be there. What happens when the basin is full? If we had rain for 40 days and 40 nights and that basin's full, then that continuing rain would continue to go into the creek just as it does today, but we would have caught at least that first flush until the basin was full. Will this project reduce flooding? It will increase the capacity of the combined sewer system during wet weather events. So to the extent that that overflow would go into the creek and cause flooding, yes, it would mitigate that, but it's not specifically a localized flooding control structure. Will the basin be visible? No, this one is underground. It's a covered facility. There'll be a control building and a screen generator, so you'll see some ancillary facilities associated with the basin. And there may be some access points or hatches so that we can get access to it that might be visible from the ground level. Another frequently asked question is, what about odor? Remember, I said that this basin only fills during rain events. So what gets in there is not raw sewage, it's sewage that is diluted by rainwater quite a bit. It's underground and covered. It's equipped with flushing equipment, just meaning that after the rain event and the basin is emptied out, we do rinse the floor with potable water or groundwater so that there's no residuals in the bottom of the tank, which is where a lot of the odor would come from. Typically, odor control is not necessary with these types of facilities. As I've said before in other presentations, there's been cities that have spent millions of dollars on odor control. Again, that's coming from our ratepayer fees, and they've never turned them on because they didn't need them. We are designing for the capacity for these. So on our design plans, we will have the odor control shown, but we won't purchase it initially. If it becomes a problem, then we already have it designed and we can buy the equipment and put it in. But, and being wise, penny wise, we want to make sure that our ratepayers' money is not wasted. So we're providing for it, but not putting it automatically in their basin. We don't think it's going to be needed. We are performing odor control monitoring and testing. And as again, it will be designed to accommodate for a future control system if it's needed. Project development over time, and back in 2012, if we were at any public meetings at that time, we would have said the basin was 8.18 million gallons. In 2014, due to additional modeling and flow monitoring, it was determined that the basin needed to be 13.7 million gallons. Again, for either volume, the level of control is 0 overflows for the typical year, which is our design year. The CSO locations, again, the site is down here at the River Meadow site, but this is Beargrass Creek, the concrete channel. This is Broadway. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 CSOs that would be connected. These are points to where during a rain event, the sewage and rainwater leaves the pipe system and enters into the concrete channel. We're trying to reduce and mitigate that. So when we have a rain event, we'll have a pipe system underneath this channel that would collect these so it doesn't overflow into the channel and it goes into this basin for a short period of time. So the parameters for the basin is it would store 13.7 million gallons. That's going to be underground and covered. Addresses 9 CSO locations, and the level of control per our consent decree is 0 overflows per year out of the CSOs. Now, let me give you an example for the rain events that happened last year. There was a total of 382 overflows total out of all of these, which he calculates to about almost 200 million gallons of untreated waste and rainwater that was dumped into Beargrass Creek there. So this project will reduce that tremendously. And the impact of that is public health and safety. Anybody that's in that water downstream or whatever, it could be a dog, a pet, a kid after a rain event, any of those things. We're trying to mitigate for public health and public safety. All right. Let's talk about the interceptor. Well, what's an interceptor? An interceptor is just the pipe that we convey this water in. It captures the overflows and conveys them to the basin. It's going to be below the concrete channel of Beargrass Creek. If any of you have been up around Eastern Parkway and Beargrass Channel there, you've seen the pipe system that went in under that channel. It's done now, about basically done. It went very well. going to be a similar design to that. The pipe will be underneath the channel. It's about 4,400 feet long, go from the intersection of Broadway to about where the South Fork and Middle Fork of the Beargrass Creek converge there at River Metals. The pipe size will be from 36 inches to 102 inches in diameter. There will be a below-ground diversion structure now near each of the existing CSOs. CSO is just the location where it leaves the pipe system to get into the channel. So we'll have a structure there that will catch that water and get it into this interceptor. Again, just what we've described verbally is this is the Broadway area, collecting these overflows down through the concrete, under the concrete channel in a pipe to the basin, which is on the River Metal site. Now let's talk about the basin site. What were some considerations for the site? The general site requirements is that it has to be connected to all of those CSOs. The site needs to be large enough to contain a basin of that size. And in the original integrated overflow abatement plan, the River Metals recycling property was identified as a potential site. And that is the boundary of that site. You see Lexington Road here, Beargrass Channel, the confluence of the two forks, and the railroad. So you can see the site kind of overgrown. A lot of the buildings are gone. Many of you are familiar that there would be environmental issues at that particular site based on its history. A site and stream bank contaminant characterization report identified the site including the stream banks are contaminated with heavy metals. MSD, should we acquire this site and proceed, would be required to submit a property management plan to the Kentucky Department of Environmental Protection because it is a contaminated site. And we would be required to minimize public exposure on a situation or a site like this, either by prohibiting access to the site, which is kind of what River Metals is doing now, sort of, or covering the site with a soil cap that then would allow public access on top of it. So those would be the two conditions for us to go forward with the site. We have a couple of pictures here, just the existing conditions of River Metals. There's some foundations and pits left, some paving. You can see it's kind of overgrown. Here's some of the trees that are there. It's kind of a low area. This is behind the houses on Lexington Road. It's kind of a low area. And again, there's some trash and things in that area. Again, this is kind of down in that low area. There's some things that have washed in there, been put in there. And you can see looking from the site towards Lexington Road, this is looking towards one of the back ends of one of the houses. That's the current condition of the site. All right, so all that leading up to what you're really all here for. What's our alternatives here? What can we vote on? What can we talk about? All right, we had the orientation public meeting on January 19th. We had 25 attendees, 24 provided feedback. The online survey was active from January 22nd through March 18th. We only had 5 participants do the online survey. That's kind of disappointing. We'd really like to have had more. But as a result,
I didn't know about
okay. Well, that's why we're here. We're going to keep emphasizing this. If you have friends and neighbors that aren't here tonight, tell them to go to the website and they can still participate just as you did this evening. We talked about, we got input from importance of general project considerations in that orientation meeting. What would be important to you as neighbors to this site? Other issues and opportunities were identified and rated by the participants. And here's kind of the summary of those. Kind of rates what they were. Proximity to residences, environmental mitigation, area for public use, trees, above ground structure appearance, parking. Those were some things that were talked about, rated or ranked in order of importance. There were some other issues that came up as a result of the discussion. Walking paths, appearance of the site, amount of property utilized, the tank underground, effect on floodplains, away from Beargrass Creek, would the top of the basin be available for public use, odor issues, include Beargrass Greenway, and construction noise. So we listened to all that, And we came up with 3 kind of alternatives that we can talk about tonight, and we'll take some input on those, some thoughts, and if there's something else that we need to look at, we'll take that under consideration as well. But we took these under consideration and came up with 3 alternatives. I'll identify them this way. Alternative 1 includes a soil cap, and that particular location would allow the most potential public use area. It allows the greatest area beyond the basin for public use. Alternative 2 would be no soil cap. Remember, this is an environmentally sensitive site, so no public use of the area, and we'll talk about what that means. And alternative 3 would be a soil cap and less potential public use area. So let's look at these. Alternative 1 is kind of located more towards the back of the houses that are along Lexington Road, and as you all know, there's some trees in this area. Options 2 and 3 occupy the same footprint, but it's farther east as far as we can go without getting into the creek bank over here. Again, and here's the boundary of the whole property. So again, option 1, a little bit larger footprint, we'll call it the westernmost. Options 2 and 3 are kind of the easternmost, and we'll talk about what's included in these. Just roughly, the alternative 1 is about 400 feet by 225 feet wide, and it's about 50 feet deep. Alternatives 2 and 3, it's approximately 300 feet by 255, but because it's a smaller area, it's about 64 feet deep. Okay, alternative 1, that's the one that has the soil cap, most potential public use area. Let's talk about that just for a moment. It's what we call the western basin location. Existing vegetation on the site is removed, and we're remediating the site by putting a soil cap back on top of that. So you're capping the contaminated material with clean soil. That would allow public access to the site. Wouldn't have to be a fence, so public could have access, walk on that. You couldn't go out and dig a big hole in it because you'd get through the cap, but it would be capped, available for public walking use. Again, no fence. I would mention that in this area where the trees, again, we would have to clear cut the trees. Let me get back here. Because we're going to put the soil cap on the site. So you cannot put the soil 2 feet deep or whatever it is around the trees. You would kill them anyway. One of the pictures I showed in this area behind the houses, there is kind of, I've walked it, there's kind of a low area here. There's not a real good natural outlet for that. It kind of holds water, it looks like to me, after a rain event. This alternative would allow for us to improve the drainage there. It would be obviously it'd be more than a 2-foot cap there because we're filling that swale in. But we would be able to put kind of a grass berm back here and do whatever kind of, I'm just trying to depict here. There's plantings that would still be, we'd be taking out some of the trees like had been shown in the picture. They weren't really landscape type trees, but it was vegetation nonetheless. But we could put back something that would still be a screen, heavily vegetate that. Just want to point that out. Again.
Jim Porter's.
Pardon me?
Locate me physically where this is compared to where Jim Porter's was.
Okay. Okay. We'd have to go back to another map. I tell you what, let me get through the presentation. We'll come back and get you oriented. How about that? We're probably a mile from Jim Porter's. This is, yeah, that's not that far probably. Again, this is still alternative 1, soil cap, just kind of a bird's eye view. Again, you can see we've got control building, some equipment. Again, just showing that we would be committed with this option, that we would revegetate this to have screening behind these houses, but again, if I could hit the right button. Having it tucked in the farther west would allow the most area of the remainder of the site, if we've capped it, for public use and access. So keep that in mind. We'll come back and revisit that. Again, this is kind of looking from the bend in Lexington Road right before you get to the first house there. You're kind of looking that way. You can kind of see berm, and we could vegetate that. Alternative 2 would be no soil cap, no public use. So just as River Metals does today, there's a fence around the site. We could fence the site, not go to the expense of a soil cap, but it would be fenced and nobody could have access to it. But that is an alternative nonetheless. What that would do, we could leave the trees down in this area in that western corner. The basin, as I said earlier, was a little bit further east, so we could leave those. But because we're not capping the site, we would have to fence that, and there would not be public access allowed to that. There would be a new perimeter fence installed.
You're talking a big difference in cost between having a cover and soil over it versus open, aren't you?
Right, we'll get to these questions. Let me get to the presentation since we're taping it. In the light green area here that we're showing, that's not a soil cap and cover, that's just the disturbed area that we've tried to revegetate, but it's not a soil cap per se. It's just revegetated, not mitigated. Again, this option does not allow for public access. Again, you can see we've been able to preserve this area, but it would have to be fenced off or nobody could have access. Again, this is kind of from the corner of that first row of buildings. Alternative 3 is a soil cap. So again, it's similar to number 1, alternative 1, but it's a smaller footprint and it's moved further east. But because we've put a soil cap, we've still had to take the trees back here. We've moved it further east, but as you can see, we're right in the middle of what could be more usable space. So there's not very much usable space on this end for public access, and we're kind of right in the middle. So we've just identified this as less potential public use area in terms of one contiguous area.
Why do you have to clear cut the trees for the soil cover?
Because if we tried to put soil cover on with the trees there, it would kill the trees anyway, and we need to mitigate. Again, that's just showing another aerial view of that. Again, just trying to show that be less area than what would be on alternative 1. Again, still showing the screening that we would plant. All right, so let's talk about some feedback. Use your clickers here. Again, remember these. Alternative 1 is a soil cap. It's more potential public use. It's what we call the Western Basin location. Existing vegetation and fencing is removed so that we can put the cap on, and when the fencing is removed, obviously once it's mitigated, then public would have access. It would allow public access, and as you can see, like I said, it's just a larger area over here. But the trees and that swale is removed that's behind those houses. So if your clickers are ready.
I don't think I have enough information really to
I'm
be
thinking
able
the
to vote
same
on
thing.
these
This is
options.
big.
We have questions about the options. We can't vote on them without understanding.
All right, we'll edit the tape then. So what's your questions? Let's talk about the options. Let's stop here for a moment. We'll go back and do that.
Because, should I start?
Sure.
I don't understand what all the light green is. You know, you have all that vegetation behind the houses, but all the light green, is that, are you going to revegetate that? You talk about public use and having passed, but does that mean that the top of the basin is not going to be available for public use? It's really hard to tell from those diagrams, whatever they are, exactly what is there, what would be there.
All right, let me take a stab at this, and then you can ask more questions. The dark green is just showing kind of the limits of the basin that's underground there. So we might have something at grade here, hatches or something, not sticking up, but just showing that we'd have the buildings. All this is showing in the dark green. That would still be the same type of grass that's over here when we revegetate.
So it's just going to be all grass, no trees or anything?
Right now, it's what we're showing, which we're going to get input about tonight. Somebody wants, we're not going to put trees on top of the basin because there's not enough cap there for root systems.
But all the rest of the light green.
Right. And when I say potential for public use, MSD and our ratepayers, yes, we're not per se in the park building business, but this would be potentially available to do additional things with. And if that's planting more trees, MSD might be able to do that, or it might be parks or some other entity doing that. Just because I've shown it green, I haven't depicted exactly what all that could be. I'm just saying that this is a soil cap so that we can allow public access and not have it fenced off. So that's what we're showing here. This swale would be filled in so that it would drain. We would still be committed to some type of heavy screening here, but we're just showing here that there would be no fence and it would be grass. As far as what goes on top over here, all I'm saying is there's public access. So if there's a park bench and trails, whatever, we're not saying, we haven't designed anything over there yet. We're just saying that the big picture is public access or not, mitigation of soil cap or not. Yes, ma'am.
Has MSD or the consultants done any sort of a natural resources inventory of this site so we have a feel for if there are wonderful trees here or terrible trees here, if there are any species, if there's Indiana bats here? I mean, do you all know what is at this site so you're able to make judgments about where these facilities could go, you know, based on what's there?
The whole site is contaminated with heavy metals. We do know that.
That is not true. I object to that.
Okay.
Well, because I've read, that's probably this tall, and I'm not lying, I've read every bit of that environmental report. And there are only spots in there that are contaminated, and it's still totally doable. And you can continue, so if you want. I have more questions.
It's hard for me to vote on this little machine without really knowing, you know, what exactly is at the site, including contaminants, including, you know, the species of natural resources.
Right, okay. Remember, on a 22-acre site, it's had a history of uses that would be contaminants to the soil, and we have dug holes there, and we have determined it is a environmentally hazardous site per the Department of Environmental Protection. So I don't know that they have identified, nor that we have, but I think because of the use of it, we could not. You could go out on 22 acres and take a shovel on every square foot and say this one's good, this one's bad. We haven't done that.
Well, because when they went to for the Corps of Engineers applicant, when the previous potential developer did, they had to submit that information to the Corps of Engineers, which is available to you all as well. Mm-hmm. And this is a 22-acre site, but inside this meander, I guess you could say, this is only about half of it, would you say?
Right.
And
right.
So,
there's maybe 10 acres on the other side.
So okay, so it's half of it. So is this everything to the east include the other 10 acres? Or you're just not showing it because you're not going to put a basin over there?
We're probably not going to build a very expensive bridge to get across there, across the creek with the conveyance system. I mean, we're adding millions of dollars at that point to cross the creek with the pipe system and building the basin across there, and then having access for trucks to get across there, construction trucks to get across there and back when the bridge is not rated. And there's just no way to build across the creek.
Okay, but it's still part of...
It's part of the parcel. And it would be part of the remediation.
Okay.
We wouldn't just be turning a blind eye to that side of the site.
Okay.
So you're gonna, if you make it the most potential of public use, you would do both the west side of that stream
Yes.
and the east side of that stream.
Yes, with the soil cap.
So the process is, A, let's determine, and just in my mind, determine, A, do we want to make it available for public use? Then if that's a yes, then that switches to what do we want to do with it, which may be take a survey of what natural resources are there to utilize those.
Sure.
And then make determinations of, based upon that, what you can do with it. Is that the right process?
That's fine. And I guess I would help us understand that the questions that we formulated, it's not a perfect process. If we could get through that, it will give us some sort of insight. It's not the final word. It's not what exactly we're going to do. It might be exactly what we do. It may stimulate more questions for which when we come back, hey, that made us think about this or whatever. And we come back and ask more questions at that time. Online survey, if there's an email, maybe there's not a place on the survey to voice your opinion. You can email in. It's not like this is the only opportunity to comment on this project and what we're presenting. We've made a stab at some alternatives based on information that we have with a lot of parameters and what the input was from January 19th. And so we're making our best stab at that, and it sounds like I'm doing a poor job of explaining this, but I think it's the big picture is, as you said, public access or not. If it's public access, we're going to need to cap the site. We're not probably going to do 10 square foot areas because it's just going to be easier, more cost effective to do it globally than to go out there and research every 25 square feet and identify yes or no. There are people who are out there now who go out there digging all over the site looking for something that they can salvage or scrap. And they don't know what, maybe it's a metal detector they're using or whatever. But it's not just chunks of metal, it's microscopic and atomic sized particles of heavy metals that have been deposited over the years, oils, those types of things that are in the soil. So to take a site this large that's had this industrial and hazardous type use, and to say that, it's right here, it's going to be more cost effective, and I think it's all under the Department of Environmental Protection. They have not, the site is what's contaminated. It's not just particular areas on the site. Yes, ma'am.
Have you reached out to the homeowners that are directly next to the...
No more specifically than we have to everybody that's in the geographic area. Yes, ma'am.
When you ask about preferences of these different options, I would certainly want to know what these homeowners think about whether which one they would prefer, rather than me, who doesn't live there, expressing a preference that would then be imposed on somebody else.
I appreciate that opinion, and I might have a personal opinion about that as well, but then do we let them decide for everything, or we're asking your opinion about this. You can presuppose theirs, you can not presuppose theirs, you can go talk to them, you can encourage them to come and talk to us or to take the survey or whatever, but this is a community project. It's not just those 12 houses project. It affects them tremendously more than somebody that lives 5 miles away or across the street, no doubt about that. But this is a project that we're trying to do our best for everybody. And we're just talking about on a large site that can't be used at all now. And we're just trying to see, when we're done with this, we're going to be probably buying the whole site, taking over the whole site. We only need a small portion. Is the will of the community to keep it fenced off where we can't use it. That saves some money on the cap. Or to somehow cap that where it can be. We can talk about what we do with that, but that's not the purpose of tonight's meeting. It's kind of the bigger picture, as you said, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry I'm late. I couldn't get here before. But on that, are you planning to remove all the concrete? Because there is a bridge over there. My dog and I walked back there when it was less secure, but that's a beautiful part of the creek down there. And are you going to clear cut all the trees along the park? I mean, this Fairgrass Creek?
No.
That's just it's like an isolated woodland stream area there.
Right.
It's beautiful, except for there's the railroad that goes by.
Sure.
It's not so isolated.
No, that's a great question.
Bridge over Market Street. But there's a bridge over here over Fairgrass Creek. Are you going to take that out?
Let me address a number of your things that make questions in my mind. You are walking on a site that's fenced for a reason, because it's contaminated soil. We wouldn't want to be a part of that where we did not mitigate this site and allow public to do that. To answer your question about trees along the channel here, we would leave those on the bank itself. We wouldn't clear cut the bank at all. We don't want to cause those erosion problems. But because we would, if the will of the public is to allow access to the site, and we don't really have much options other than to cap the site. And to cap the site, we would be cutting the trees on the site other than the creek bank so that we could put the cap on there. Now, we can talk about, as I said earlier, we'll put revegetation and grass, but if there's additional trees not on the basin, paths, whatever, that's a further discussion for advanced design. What we're talking about today is just, do we want to be able to, you want to drive by this site and see the fence and say we can't get on there, or do we want to be able to say we can have access to that? And now we're talking about just the options that we've been able to come up with, and we did not look at we looked at the other side, but again, remember this conveyance that's under the concrete channel? It's close here, it's close to options 2 and 3. If we go on the other side, we're crossing the channel again with the pipe, an unimproved channel with the pipe. So it's additional depth, it's crossing an unimproved channel, it's just adding millions of dollars to the project. So we're trying to be cost effective with our ratepayers' money. And again, this particular site in the western allows more contiguous area. This kind of keeps it tucked away on the side where if there was some other use, I mean, when we're done with this project, if somebody wanted to do something with the rest of that, we don't want to be in the grass mowing business. I mean, if somebody else wants to use the rest of that, I'm sure MSD would be willing to work with them. Yes, Lisa.
Is there I have talked to the neighbors down there a lot, and they have the willies about people being behind their houses. And so
Currently or in the future?
in the future.
There are people there now.
I understand that, but like that it's inviting people in, I guess. And is there an opportunity to maybe have the alternative one location, but without public access to that part of it?
When you say public access, the access to the site would be off of some access road off of Lexington Road.
I guess because it would be easy to fence off from the other 30 acres in that location, so that people aren't like traipsing between that tree line and their yard.
Okay. That's a great question, and I think that's something that if we go step back just for a second, we talk about public access, but yeah, maybe we want limited access here because of that. That's a really deep detail that's probably in the scope of this project. It's not very many dollars, and we would probably be very flexible on that.
So you mean most potential public use, you don't mean necessarily on top of the basin, you just mean of the entire site?
Right. I mean, people could walk here if it's open, but I mean, if it was the will of these people and most everybody that, hey, we like this because we can improve drainage here, we can still have some trees, and we like the fact that people can get on here, but we'd like to see that kind of fence where people can't be milling around here behind our house. I'm sure that's something we could do, but that's something that, I don't have a specific question on that, but that's certainly something that we could entertain at any time during the construction process. We don't have to decide that tonight. All right.
Thanks, sorry.
No problem. All right, option one, everybody understand that, is public access, but we're going to cap it, and we're going to cut some trees. We are going to mitigate the other side of the creek as well, but the answer about the bridge, that bridge is not, it's old, it's not rated for any type of traffic. I don't know of a structural engineer in its current state that would go out and even assign some rating to it. So we're probably not in the business, if we keep all of our operations on this side, of just building a bridge to nowhere just to get access. But pedestrian traffic across there may or may not be okay, but I'm not going to sit here and commit to that. I'd get some engineer to stamp that before I just say that.
Are you relocating the creek at all?
No, sir.
You talk about a waterway, concrete waterway. It's going to be like Eastern Parkway where the...
Well, this part of the channel is already concrete, just like Eastern Parkway. And our pipe system will be underneath that concrete bottom of that channel, and when we're done, you'll just see the same concrete type channel that you see today.
Well, with all the contamination, how can you open it up to the public for people to play on that?
We'll put a soil cap on top of it and grass.
Do you anticipate how much soil you're going to have to truck away?
Yes, sir.
That you can't reuse?
Right. We would not be trucking contaminated soil off the site. We would be spreading it on site and then covering it with clean soil. Clean soil will not be generated on this site. It'll be generated somewhere else and brought to the site. All right. I've spent a lot of time here. There are people who are signaling they'd like to vote and get home and see their kids or wife or whatever. So let's go on. That was alternative one. We spent a lot of time on that. Alternative two is we just spread out the contaminated soil and get grass to grow on it, but we fence the whole site. Nobody gets access because it's contaminated soil. Can't walk your dog, can't walk on it. That's option two. But what that does do is it allows us to leave the trees that are out there now. Those are not specimen trees. I'm not an arborist, but I can tell you that. Feel pretty confident.
They're so far away from the MSD site, all those trees.
Right, we've moved the site on alternative two to the east so that we don't disturb over here. But when we don't disturb, again, this is all contaminated, we'll just keep it fenced and nobody can get on there. But we're not putting trees there and we're not putting trees back as a screen because we're keeping people off the site.
Which way is east?
Is that to the right?
To the right?
East would be to the right. Yeah, on this rendering, yes.
That's Lexington Road where the houses are.
Yes, sir. Lexington Road's here. Again, another rendering view of alternative two. Alternative three would have a soil cap, but we've located the basin kind of in as far east as we can, but it kind of bifurcates the site to where you've got area over here and area over here. So it's not one large area. It's just two smaller areas. What would be the access? You'd have to have a separate access over here, separate access over here. That's just the three alternatives. All right.
Are you aware of how the water gets and how long it's flooding, how long?
Yes. We've got all those.
Are you dependent upon the pumps working down there at the pump station to keep it low?
No. Not for this, artificially.
In other words, they put that flooding after the 37 flood, they put that, I think it was later, that water backed all up in there.
Right. What we're talking about is just during normal rain events, whether the river's up or down, or whether that pump station's pumping or not, what can we do to keep sewage out of the creek when it's raining? So sometimes it'll happen when the river's up and the flood pump station is on. Sometimes the river is not up and the flood pump station is not on, but we're still trying to keep the sewage out of the creek. All right, remember, alternative one, it's the westernmost. We have an opportunity to fill in this area, improve drainage. Again, larger area for public use. So there is no right or wrong answer here. Oh, because we did this one time?
Yeah, just give it a second.
All right. Once I hit reverse, we kind of messed it up there.
How does this influence that trail, that walking trail, bike trail down through there? How does that influence?
I mean, the site's there. We're not on the edges of it, so.
You're not going to disturb that at all?
All right.
Trying to get to reset here.
Is it not resetting?
Yeah. Don't click it yourself.
I'm not clicking.
Okay. There we go.
All right. Take your clickers and let's talk about alternative one.
Should be fine.
Just, is it very unpreferable or is it very preferable or any range in between 1 through 7? 7 is it's very preferable in your mind tonight as we've talked about it, and very unpreferable is number 1. So let's go ahead and vote on that. Okay, we should have a few more.
Pushing this to make us vote real quick.
All right, let's see here.
I know it don't matter.
All right. Next, let's talk about alternative 2. No soil cap, fencing the site, no public use area. All right. It says polling closed on that.
No,
Hold on a second.
All right. There it goes.
All right, now vote. All right. There we go. All right. Now, alternative 3. Again, soil cap, public access, a little bit less area for public use. Stand up again.
I guess I have to stand up and walk over to the machine.
There you go. Thank you. All right, go ahead and vote. All right, we'll close the polling on that. All right.
I think we ought to know how much money we're talking on 1, 2, and 3. Are we talking 3 times as much on 1 as 3? Are we talking half as much? How much are we talking?
Is it going to raise our rates
Yeah,
depending
it's
on
going
which
to raise
one
your
we
rate.
want?
Raise your rate. Everybody.
Whether we vote for 1, 2, or 3 will not make a difference in the rates.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you that.
That's good.
All right, other project site considerations. Now, this is the open mic night, so Ted can type in some things that if there's something else. That may be one of your questions you want to put in there. How do any of the alternatives affect my rates? We can put that in there and address that.
Zoom it up a little bit. Well, come on. Anyway, talk amongst yourselves. You could do it this way. There. You
All right.
AMC.
Let's talk about it. Lisa, I know you probably have one. What could we consider?
Oh, come on.
First of all, since the rate increase is off the board. It's really not going to affect us one way or another.
As it would relate to this particular project.
Okay, all right. How would the remainder of the property that's not being utilized, how would that be available to the public at large or for the common use of the community?
That's probably a good question for your card, but I'll go ahead and answer it. That is, if we buy the site, it's one parcel, we'll be buying the whole thing. When we mitigate it, we'll be mitigating the whole thing. We only need one small portion. I can't sit there and commit today on what MSD will or won't do politically or engineering-wise with the rest of that site. It would be up to community leaders, Bill and his associates. MSD has no need for the extra site that we would have mitigated at that point. We would be more than happy to dedicate, parcel that off and probably work with somebody, and we wouldn't have to maintain that. We're not in the park business, we're in the sewer business, but we are taking care of the baseline of getting it ready for a clean slate for what somebody might want to do next with that. And to some extent that we might be willing or able to plant some trees there, put a trail in there, that wouldn't be off the table all the time. So questions, general questions about that, write those down, but comments is what we need here so we can vote on them. Yes, sir.
I'd like to see some public parking for both the neighbors and the neighborhood businesses.
All right. Good one. We've heard that before. Yes, ma'am.
How about the surrounding homeowners opinion?
Okay.
I'd like to see the integrity of the creek maintained. It's really a lovely area that's like a little island inside of planes going over, trains going by, seeing a big bird fly through there. It's just quite peaceful. Reminds us of what we once had that we've destroyed. Also, I'd like to see maximizing tree, since we are such a heat island, is there anything that could trees be planted so that we would not be contributing to the heat island? We're one of the cities that is heating up the fastest in the United States. So unless we're radiating that heat out to others in the wintertime.
Something like that.
Maximize tree opportunities, yeah. And the integrity may need to be put in quotes because what's there now may not be what originally was there. So how to deal with that in a sensitive way.
The mattresses have always been.
Well, and then that bridge they have over there, that's like a dam that blocks up, it blocks up the creek. Things don't flow through that bridge. So,
Walking paths?
And maybe a general park of some kind, a neighborhood park.
could we repopulate it with beavers? With beavers, yeah, I did, and otters.
Got room for
I thought you wanted the dam removed, they would be building that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Since there's another park nearby that's mostly grass, it would be really wonderful to have at least part of it, if not all of it, sort of a woodland type of park with walking paths and anyway, something a little different and a little different from anything that's right around in that area.
Is that your main point, or?
Yeah, woodland, yeah, more woodland versus grass, yeah.
Okay. 2 more.
I would just like to try and restate what was supposed to be a question. And I think it got a little distracted. I mean, I would like to know more about what is specifically on this site. If you are person who is going to buy a piece of property, you typically do an environmental survey, you do a phase 1, you do a phase 2, you find out specifically what is on the site, you do an inventory of the natural resources. I mean, I haven't been on the site, and I don't have enough information from your presentation. I mean, it's been helpful, but I don't know enough about what's there to know what is in the best interest, the best public interest about where these things could go. And I'm not really understanding if MSD has done their due diligence on the site. I mean, I know others have done it for other purposes, but without knowing that background information, I can't possibly say, cut down all the trees and, you know, do this here, don't cut down all the trees. I mean, MSD has had troubles in the past with Indiana bats that have been endangered species in the line of projects. And I just would hate to see MSD get into the doghouse again with things like that, especially since this is like right in the middle of town, right in the middle of neighborhoods. And I don't know how you condense that for your format here. But
Well, I can answer that real kind of briefly, hopefully. We have done all that due diligence. This was not a meeting to expound upon everything that we found about that. We've boiled that information down to say whether we pick alternative 1, 2, or 3 is really not, has no bearing on what the environmental hazards of the site were. It boiled it down into whether we cap that or we keep people off of it. As far as bats, on all of our projects, there are times of year and there's restrictions on what we can do. So yes, we can take trees down. There'd be certain, if they're Indian bat habitat or maternity times of years, we couldn't do it during that period of time, but we could take trees down. We are sensitive to that, and we do obey those laws and regulations. But we have looked into all of those situations because it is like you buy a house. We've done that due diligence. This is what we've come up with as engineers, mitigating those ideas of what we can do. I don't know what else we could do in terms of either capping the site or keeping it off. I guess you could go in there and say, I'm going to clean every particle of soil on there by some method, whether that's high heat or whatever that might be, to burn off heavy metals or that type of thing. I don't know what that might be, but I know it's not economically feasible for any of us. So these seem to be the best ways, the most common ways of handling this. If there's something that's off the wall that might cost a lot of money, we're probably not going to consider that. We're trying to do this because we are an $850 million consent decree. We do have some of the lowest sewer rates in a 10 major city area. We'd like to keep it that way. But so we have considered those things, and I appreciate the question and the premise. I'm sorry this presentation didn't get into all the environmental reports. Those are available as our public records. If you want to see us or the project manager after this, I'm happy to share that with you. But that was not the purpose of this meeting.
I would think maybe addressing it with more neighborly education about the inventory. And yeah, because people just don't know more education of the surrounding area, people in the surrounding area about the inventory of what has been found. Because it sounds like, from what I hear you saying, is you've got the information, it just hasn't got disseminated.
That's something we could bring out at the next meeting. We could make some more slides on what was there, what led us to these decisions.
That would be helpful.
Okay.
Correct our lack of knowledge.
Certainly. All right.
So we can make more comments and vote online, right?
Yes, ma'am.
4.
All right. Now take your clickers, and on the ones that we just came up with, you can vote for up to 4. What would be your top 4 of these, if you had to pick 4, just to give us a feel for at least this group, how you feel about what are the 4 most important to you of these considerations? All right. Everybody voted for 4?
No.
All right. We need a little background music. We good? All right. All right. Thank you for your all's participation and patience this evening. Our next steps, we will begin our advanced design. We're going to take this information. The polling's going to be online for a month or two. We're going to get to questions in a second. We're going to continue with coordination of state agency stakeholders. Future public outreach, we'll be sending out meeting notices for advanced design public meeting in the fall of 2016. Our Pardon Our Dust, or the beginning of construction, will be summer of next year. We need to be complete by the spring of 2020, and our deadline is December 31st of 2020. So again, with your clickers, just how satisfied are you with this method? I hope it's as much fun for you all as it is for me up here. So vote for that. 1 if you're very unsatisfied, 9 if you're very satisfied, or some number in between. All right. It's closed. For general information or emergencies, always is our public service announcement. Call 502-587-0603. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And again, for more information, you can go to msdprojectwin.org, and you can take the survey online. It'll be up in just a few days. And how can I learn more about the public meetings? We're starting a new thing with the Eventbrite. So we can pre-register individuals and groups. You can register individuals at the door. We'll create an email database where you can be made aware of every meeting that's related to this Lexington and Payne project. You can register for free tickets, in quotation marks, as attendee, or whether you'll be attending or not, or if you just want more information. And if you're not going to be able to attend the meeting, just register as not attending but would like more info. So at this time, if you have some written questions, I'd be happy to take those. And again, if somebody needs to leave, we've been here a long time tonight. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate your time. We want this to be a collaborative process. It doesn't always seem like that. I've been in your chair before. If you've been in mine, you understand the same situation. We're trying to get to a common goal for public health and safety, and we're under a federal consent decree. We've got the government on top of us saying we need to do something. We're trying to get that accomplished, but we're trying to get it in a manner that we we can't please everybody, but offend the least amount of people for sure. So thank you again. But if you have any questions, just raise your card up and we're happy to collect those.
What happened at Logan Street? Are you going to put a top on Logan Street?
If you were at the board meeting or heard about it yesterday, or if it was in the paper today, the structure that was above ground will now be, it's just going to be grass covered. So the structure that was part above ground, which was not part of the basin, the water was always below ground. It'd just be an at-grade basin. There will be some other, as with this basin, that are buried. There'll be other ancillary buildings associated, but the large building that was planned there is no longer. What precautions will be taken to prevent damage to existing homes on the 1300 block of Lexington Road during construction? Seems to be an issue in the construction of the Smoketown Basin, specifically from blasting. You know, there's no question anytime there's blasting involved, there are rules and regulations that doesn't prevent things that shouldn't happen from happening. We try in every case to try to make any damage claims, if they're justified, we make that whole. We tell our contractors as part of the contract documents any damage that's done needs to be restored to as pre-construction or better conditions. Again, I don't know all the geology. We'll be blasting. We're going to be blasting. If we got the rock at the bottom as rock anchors. Yeah. Okay, we will have some blasting on that site. There will be requirements for vibration. They'll be monitoring every blast. So there will be pre-blast surveys. We'll have pictures of those houses inside and out. The people can take additional pictures. So if there is any damage, we would be obligated to fix those.
Actually, beyond that, I mean, I'm sure the blasting would not necessarily just affect that one row of houses. I mean, I'm sure it would go further.
Sure, they monitor at a certain distance, and there's a requirement for a vibration particle velocity speeds at a certain distance for which scientifically there shouldn't be any damage. Are there plans to sell any unused portion of the site? There are no plans. I say this again, I'll try to emphasize this. It's a 22-acre site. When we purchase this, if we mitigate it, we would be mitigating the whole site. We only need a portion of the site. What happens with the portion that we don't need beyond us, we will be obligated to maintain it unless somebody else came along and did something. MSD is not specifically in the parks business. I mean, if somebody wanted to do that, if Metro Parks wanted to take that, I'm sure we could work with them. My focus as construction manager and MSD representative is we need to get this built on time, within budget, economically for all of us, and to keep in compliance with the consent decree. Because with this parcel, there's excess property or excess area that we don't need, we would be mitigating that. So that's kind of, because it's on the parcel, we'd be obligated to do that. But as far as to committing that it would be subdivided and that we would sell that off, there's no plans, but there's no plans not to do that either. It's just we're focused on getting this done first. On the map of the site, what adjoining properties and are their uses? Well, as you saw, there was residential houses there along Lexington Road. I guess to the south, there is is it a restaurant facility or what is that? Catering facility, yes. And then Masterson's, and of course.
I was hoping you could go back to the map itself.
Sure.
Point out what's what around it, because it's. The map of the site. It's back. That map.
Okay, so we've got Lexington Road, kind of the curve here. There's the row of residential houses. Here's the catering facility. We're bounded on this side by Beargrass Creek and the railroad. Over here is the home of the Innocents. This is on the other side of the creek, still the same parcel. Again, the railroad, and then over here is a new, this is the new residential apartment complex going in. Is that what's going in over here?
300 units.
300 units of residential over here. Across is Headliners and some other things. Across Lexington Road is some more residential. So the closest residential is right here. And we have some on the east end, pretty far away, separated by the channel, and the railroad is kind of a boundary to other areas around there. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so the part of the parcel north of Beargrass Creek there, will that be accessible to the public at all?
Well, this is the concrete channel right here. And that's not part of our parcel, so.
Well, I meant the part to the right, to the east.
Over here?
Yeah.
Well, there's an old bridge right there. We don't have any plans on replacing that bridge.
Would it be adaptable for pedestrians?
Possibly. As I said earlier, we'd have to have somebody certify that. MSD is always interested in what's the liability. So I can't commit to that tonight. Other than we would be committed to mitigating that side of the creek if that's what the plan was, if it wasn't to fence it off. All right, you have another question? Will the culvert bridge be removed? If not, will its future removal impact the basin design? If you're talking about that bridge, no, that wouldn't impact the basin design. And as far as a commitment on that, we don't have that this evening, one way or another. Again, I'm focused on meeting the consent decree and getting that done first. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
The intake to these buildings when there's overflow, or has that been decided yet?
When you say intake to the buildings, what buildings? You talking about the basin?
Yeah.
Okay, as we said earlier, the conveyance system or that pipe system, kind of this red line that's below the concrete channel, we've picked up all those overflows and we'll be putting it into the basin here or here.
Thank you.
Again, like I said, if the basin were to be located over here, it would be deeper. We'd have to have access all the time. This conveyance would again cross an unimproved channel, a natural channel, which would be, we'd be destroying the banks at that point. Have to restore them, obviously. But there's a number of economic, ecological, and financial reasons not to go over there when we can serve the purpose over here. All right, this is going to be a fun editing job for what's going to be shown on TV, so I pity the people who have to do that. But thank you all for coming, and I appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
Still going to be a basin up at behind Jim Porter's?
Yes, ma'am. We'll have another public meeting on that.
Okay, so this doesn't replace that?
No.
It's in addition to it?
Now, different overflows are addressed up there. These are the ones right along the channel here. The basins are located close to where the overflows are. All right, thank you all.